Miss English, are you done? Okay, good morning, everyone. It's great to see everyone in person. Welcome. Tuesday, July 6th. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Good morning. Calling the roll for the Tuesday, July 6th Board of Control meeting. It's 11:02. Dale Miller.
Here in person.
Nan Baker. Here. Trevor Mackler serving as an alternate for Purnell Jones.
Here.
Mike Chambers serving as an alternate for Armin Budish.
Here.
Lee Tucker serving as an alternate for the fiscal officer.
Here.
Nicole English serving as an alternate for Mike Dever.
Here.
Catherine Tkachuk.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, very good. Moving on, we have the minutes from June 28th. If anyone has any questions, if not, I'll make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, second by Ms. Tucker. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, item approved. Is there any public comment? Anyone wishes to speak? May do so now. Okay, no public comment. Moving on to contracts and awards.
First item, BC 2021-319, Department of Public Works, recommending an award on requisition 5871 and enter into a contract with Carefree Maintenance Company in the amount not to exceed $8,000 for sprinkler system maintenance at various county buildings for the period June 28th, 2021 through March 31st, 2022.
Good morning, Tom Pavich, Public Works. This first item, we're recommending award to Carefree Maintenance. It's a not-to-exceed contract. It's a 9-month contract for sprinkler maintenance and repairs at 6 of our county buildings.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Are there any questions from the board on this item? It's nice I can see everybody in person.
So, I'll make a comment.
Yes, please.
Which is that, I know what it costs to maintain just our own little sprinkler system
Yep.
at home, so I don't think we're getting a bad deal.
No, we bid this out competitively every year, and we have a price for the sprinkler startup and closure for the season, and then obviously people run over these sprinkler heads, and those are not cheap to replace. So there's a lot of extra contingency baked into this $8,000 for repairs. So, yep.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Miller. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Item approved. Next
Thank you.
item.
Next item, PC 2021-320, Department of Information Technology, recommending an award and enter into a contract with Arisma Group LLC, doing business as Sendian, in the amount not to exceed $289,575 for Enterprise Resource Planning System Support Services for the period June 28th, 2021 through February 28th, 2022.
Good morning, Janelle Green on behalf of the Department of IT. This is a contract for essentially staffing augmentation services to assist with the rollout of the ERP system. This contract is set to end with the expiration date or the end date of the payroll rollout that is due to be completed in February. This actually gives us assistance with the payroll WFM project as well as the HR modules. And this is actually split between HR and the ERP capital fund. So there'll be a correction to the general fund funding source label.
Okay, thank you, Janelle. Are there any questions from the board on this item?
Good morning, Janelle. Just to confirm, $155,925 will be coming out of the ERP capital budget,
That is correct.
and the rest will be coming out of the general fund operating?
That will be from HR's portion.
Okay.
And this also replaces we have a termination that's later in the consent agenda. This contract will replace those two contracts.
So this is not an increase to the overall project cost? This was in your projections that you...
Right. So earlier in the year, I believe Jack requested an appropriation of about $600,000, just rounding. So this will replace that, and that will be a part of that appropriation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was my question.
Same. Okay. Additional questions? Councilman Miller.
So, just a comment, I just want to make everybody aware that the long-awaited mini parallel test is starting today, based on the period that started on July 4th. And this will enable us to compare the payroll entries under the old system compared to the new system and identify and correct any sources of discrepancies. So this is an important part of the program for getting ready for the go live on payroll WFM at the beginning of next year.
That's correct.
Duly noted.
Thank
Seeing no, oh, Mr. Meckler, good. Seeing no further questions, I'll make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Miller. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item approved.
Thank you.
As amended, correct, the funding source? Yep. Okay. Next item.
Next item, BC 2021-321, Court of Common Pleas Corrections Planning Board submitting an RFP exemption on requisition 6275, which will result in an award recommendation to Case Western Reserve University in the amount not to exceed $400,000 for MAT 2 drug court data collection and program evaluation services for the period May 31st, 2019 through May 30th, 2024, and recommending the award in connection with said RFP exemption.
Good morning. I'm Linda Lagoonzad, co-administrator with the Courts Corrections Planning Board. The Cuyahoga County MAT Drug Court, the drug court also called Drug Court MAT 2, is a 5-year expansion project funded by SAMHSA. It is a drug court that annually serves an additional 50 unduplicated clients or 250 unduplicated clients over a 5-year period of the grant. And these individuals have opioid use disorders, and we are further bridging the gap between treatment and long-term sobriety. The drug court provides opiate-dependent offenders with judicial supervision, intensive case management involving our treatment alternatives to street crime, our task counselors and probation officer support, program sanctions, rewards, and residential and outpatient treatment, along with the availability of medication-assisted treatment, also called MAT, and the opportunity to extend their recovery by living in halfway houses or sober living accommodations. This contract before you is about Case Western Reserve University and their research staff, who will be compensated $400,000 over a 5-year period to conduct evaluative services for this program, the Drug Court MAT 2 program, from May 31st, 2019 to December 31st, 2024. Now, there was a document that was submitted with this submission. It was called a late submission of an agenda item signed by Mr. Marty Murphy. This morning, he is unavailable to talk. I'm in his place, and he has some additional information to share regarding the delay of this particular item. I know you have asked for additional information, so hopefully this will suffice. And I will actually read it to you. Number one, when we received the MAT 2 award, it had a start date of May 2019. Normally, federal awards begin October 1st and end September 30th. Because we already were operating the MAT 1 grant, which would not end until September 2019, they overlapped, we decided to hold our start date within the program to October of 2019. In the fall of 2019, CASE had an internal, personal, and organizational issues. Basically, we did not know where the substance use disorder evaluation team would be located at CASE. Ultimately, the SUD evaluation by CASE was relocated to the Center on Trauma and Diversity from the Begun Center for Violence Research and Education. We did not know where we would be contracting with until early 2020. Then, obviously, COVID hit, and it took a while for everyone, including CASE, to figure out how to operate remotely. And due to COVID, there were restrictions across law enforcement in place, from the police, the sheriff, jail, to prosecutions. The stream of potential MAT grant participants completely dried up. There were close to 0 clients available for evaluation. Lastly, in 2021, it took some time to get this item through the ERP system. And by the way, I was managing that process. And I still give kudos to Michelle Hicks at County Procurement. She's just really kind and patient person. Great to work with her. And then the item was finally returned to the Corrections Planning Board. We went back and forth, and I had to learn the system, by the way, too. So this brings us to today. And so SAMHSA and the Corrections Planning Board have they've had monthly contact throughout the pandemic regarding the status of this grant. We are by no means an outlier when compared to other jurisdictions who receive SAMHSA funding, and that is so true, and I deal with Bureau of Justice Assistance grants as well. Marty Murphy is intending to file a request for no-cost extension to bring this program out another year. Obviously, that'll take care of this delay process, and we are doing the same for a few of our Bureau of Justice Assistance grants as well. And the federal government completely understands, obviously, the difficulties we've had to endure through COVID. And so, the last one is this case has not been paid for these grant-related expenses to date, and, and just, how we've had to deal with the ERP system. But now I think we're in pretty good stand right now. We have one item left in all our conversions, and we're looking forward to moving it forward this summer on with normalcy. Any other questions?
Well, thank you. Are there questions from the board?
Go
I
ahead.
hope I can answer.
Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you for that explanation. It certainly helped. Just for clarification, so the 400,000 is a consistent number that has not decreased or increased?
Yes, that is true.
Okay.
At least from my experience in being with the board, Corrections Planning Board over the last 3 years, yes.
And did I hear you just say that the case has not received any funding but are anticipating getting some back funding?
That is true. I would
Okay.
for whatever work that's been conducted, they've had some meetings, as Marty Murphy has mentioned.
Okay.
There's probably some minimal cost that,
Okay.
yes.
And then thirdly, did you say that this was going to be extended out past 2024?
That is the anticipation. Obviously, it has to be approved by SAMHSA, but our expectation is that it would be because, again, in parallel, the Bureau of Justice Assistance grants have allowed 2 of our other federal grants to be, yes, extended by 1 year, no questions asked.
Okay.
So, and that would be the logical thing to do here in this case.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Just a comment to say thanks very much for the detailed explanation, and I'm satisfied and good to go. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Miller. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Item approved. Next item.
Thank you.
Next item, BC 2021-322, Court of Common Pleas, Juvenile Court Division, submitting an amendment to a master contract with various providers for diagnostic clinic psychologist services for the period January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2020, to extend the time period to December 31st, 2021, to remove one provider, to modify language in Section 12 regarding commercial general liability insurance coverage, and for additional funds in the total amount not to exceed $200,000. With Douglas E. Waltman in the amount not to exceed $75,000, with Randall S. Bainan in the amount not to exceed $75,000, and with Terry B. Pincinel in the amount not to exceed $50,000.
Good morning, Sarah Baker with Juvenile Court. This is an amendment to our contract with our psychologists that we have down in our diagnostic clinic. They provide assessment services to kids that are coming through the courtrooms, or we also provide assessments to youth over at DCFS as well. We are amending to keep Mr. Waltman, Bainan, and Pincinel on, and we are removing Mr. Becker for this term. And also right now we're going through the RFQ process as well for a January 2022 start.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Any questions from the board on this item? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Seconded by Mr. Mackler. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item approved.
Thank
Next
you.
item.
Next item, BC 2021-323, Department of Public Safety and Justice Services, submitting an RFP exemption on requisition 5723, which will result in an award recommendation to Journey Center for Safety and Healing, doing business as Domestic Violence and Advocacy Center, in the amount not to exceed $175,475.77 for the coordination of training of suburban police departments on the use of danger assessment for law enforcement in connection with fiscal year 2020, improving criminal justice responses to domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking grant program for the period January 6, 2021 through September 30th, 2023, and recommending the award in connection with said RFP exemption.
Good morning, Mary Beth Vaughn from Public Safety, and with me is Jill Smilek, the manager of our Witness Victim Services Center, in case there's any programmatic questions. This contract is being funded by a competitive VAWA grant that Witness Victim Services received from the U.S. Department of Justice. The RFP exemption is being requested because Journey Center was specifically named in our grant application. The grant required a partnership with a domestic violence service provider, and Journey is the only qualifying service provider in Cuyahoga County. Specifically, Journey Center will be partnering with suburban police departments on the use of the danger assessment for law enforcement and will assist the departments in amending policies and procedures.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Questions from the board on this item?
I guess I have one question.
Sure, Councilwoman Baker.
So when you say suburban cities, I think is how you put it, what does that mean? Across the whole county, all suburban? How do you categorize that?
So this is a continuation of a project that we started under a previous federal grant. So we've already trained all police officers in the city of Cleveland. We've
Okay.
also trained South Euclid and Shaker Heights. So we will be doing other suburban jurisdictions, looking at a number of different departments. Usually what our primary approach is to go to one suburban court
Okay.
and then train those police departments that fall under that court.
Great, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, hearing no further questions, I will make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Baker. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Item approved. Next item.
Next item, BC 2021-324, Department of Public Safety and Justice Services, recommending an award on requisition 3777 and enter into a contract with Delta Development Group Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $49,945 for the development of a continuity of operations plan for the period May 10th, 2021 through December 31st, 2021.
Good morning, Mary Beth Vaughn from Public Safety again, and with me is Mark Christie, our Emergency Management Manager, in case there's any programmatic questions. For this contract, we actually issued a formal RFP. We're making an award recommendation to the top-rated vendor. We received 3 responses, and as Sharon has mentioned, this will be a continuity of government-based plan for the county.
Okay, thank you, Mary Beth. Questions from the board on this item?
If I may just, for
Please.
clarification. So whether it's CARES or whether it's the, I forget what it's
The
called.
rescue plan?
Rescue.
Yes.
Whether it's the rescue plan, this will be covered in one or the other?
That's what the anticipation is. I mean, if for some reason it's not eligible for either one of them, we do have the funding in our budget, but it's anticipated it will fall within one or the other. And we did do the procurement to coincide with what the federal requirements are, so we won't have any issues there.
Has the CARES Act expired in its time of when it can be used? I thought there was an expiration date on that.
It has not expired yet. I'm actually going to defer to Catherine on that.
Okay.
It expires December 31st of
Of
2021. It got extended.
Oh,
It
for a
was-
whole year.
So December 31st.
Got it, thank you.
Sure. Just to comment on that, make sure you work with Director Parfiowitz on any ARPA money.
Okay.
Make sure, just because you noted here doesn't necessarily mean he's going to pick it up.
No, and we've
Okay.
actually, Matt Ruby is aware of it too.
Good, good. Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions on this item? No? I'm going to make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Baker. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Item approved. Next item.
Next item, BC 2021-325, Department of Public Safety and Justice Services, recommending awards and enter into agreements with City of Cleveland Department of Public Safety in the total amount not to exceed $273,189.82 for various services in connection with the fiscal year 2020 Stop Violence Against Women Act Block Grant Program for the period January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021, in the amount not to exceed $94,763.66 for the provision of 2 Cleveland police detectives to provide investigation services for the Cleveland Domestic Violence Project, and in the amount not to exceed $136,594.91 for prosecution services for domestic violence and sexual assault cases, and in the amount not to exceed $41,831.25 for the provision of a sexual assault advocate to assist victims with crisis intervention and referral services.
Good morning, Mary Beth Vaughn again. And these contracts are being funded by our VAWA grant. As Sharon has already stated, the first contract funds a portion of the salary for 2 detectives who specialize in investigating domestic violence cases. The second contract is pays the portion of the salaries of 6 prosecutors and 2 paralegals who specialize in prosecuting domestic violence cases in the city of Cleveland. And the third contract reimburses the city of Cleveland. They have a subrecipient contract with the Cleveland Rape Crisis to have a sexual assault advocate who is embedded with the Cleveland Police Department to assist those domestic violence clients. It assists the victims with assessing medical treatment as well as counseling services. And as we mentioned in the previous questions that were asked, we do not receive notice of this award until after the award period starts. These contracts start on January 1st. We did not receive the notice of award until February 17th, after which time we need to get the award accepted. We need to have the fiscal set up, so we couldn't even start on them until April.
Okay, thank you, Mary Beth. Questions from the board?
Just one.
Councilwoman Baker.
So did I hear you say that this will be a reimbursement, they're waiting to be paid?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we've actually not received any invoices yet from the city of Cleveland. I'm expecting as soon as we send the executed contract, I will receive 6 invoices for each contract.
So they have been in place and been performing the services?
That
and
is
waiting
correct.
for their money?
Yes, in these particular cases, these are all continuation contracts. Some of them go back to 2009. They've had these programs in place.
Okay.
So they've just kept the staff in place and have continued to provide the service.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any final questions? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Miller. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item approved.
Thank you.
Next item.
Next item, BC 2021-326, Prosecutor's Office, submitting an RFP exemption on requisition 6796, which will result in an award recommendation to Celebrate Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $12,900 for the renewal of 3 Universal Forensic Extraction Device 4PC forensic software licenses for the Internet Crimes Against Children's Task Force for the period June 30th, 2021 through June 29th, 2022, and recommending the award in connection with said RFP exemption.
Good morning, Dave Ferteri with the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office, Ohio Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. As was stated, this is a renewal for 3 forensic licenses. The program is created by Celebrate. It's the Universal Forensic Extraction Tool. It allows us to conduct legal mobile device extractions for Internet Crimes Against Children investigations. It's the period June 30th, 2021 to June 29th, 2022. It's funded by a grant from the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Any questions from the board on this item? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Seconded by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Item approved.
Thank you.
Next item, BC 2021-327, Sheriff's Department, submitting an amendment to an agreement with the City of Bedford Heights for lease of the Bedford Heights Jail located at 5661 Perkins Road, Bedford Heights, for the operation of county jail facilities for the period October 1st, 2017 through September 30th, 2027, to change the scope of services by assigning full responsibility for transportation, housing, maintenance, and general upkeep of the Bedford Heights Jail to the City of Bedford Heights effective October 1st, 2020, and for additional funds in the amount not to exceed $32,000.
Good morning, Donna Khalil, Sheriff Violence Fiscal Manager. This is an amendment to the original agreement. The original agreement was pretty much a no-cost agreement. It was a $1 lease with the City of Bedford, and the Sheriff's Department was going to operate the jail, house some of our Cleveland prisoners there, and also house the Bedford prisoners there. But now that they have, as Bob would put it, mothballed that facility at this time, and a decision has not been made if this is going to be permanent or not, we are asking to get this amendment approved, because now the responsibility of housing and transporting those Bedford Heights prisoners will be on the City of Bedford Heights. But in return for that, there's an agreed upon amount that we were going to pay them $4,000 a month for this 8-month amendment.
Thank you, Donna. Are there questions from the board on this item? Mr. Mackler.
Good morning, Donna. Do you know what happens after the 8 months. Do we have a plan yet? Are we looking to extend this at some point? I know this has
Currently,
been a while.
we already have the second amendment drafted, which is going to begin on June 1st. But with this new system, we cannot enter that second amendment because it all falls under the same PO number, then the same CM number. So as soon as this one is approved and out of the system, the second one, it's already signed by the city of Bedford Heights, will be coming right through, and that one will be a 12-month. And we're hoping within that next 12 months, we can decide what we're going to be doing with the Bedford Heights facility.
Same dollar amount per month?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any additional? Councilwoman Baker?
And just for clarification, that 4,000 a month would be only as needed. So if a decision was made by June of next year for the second round, the balance would not be spent.
Correct.
Right? It's only as needed.
Correct.
And if I may,
Please.
without a long explanation, the 4,000 came up, how did you come up with, why not 3,000 or 5,000?
Rhonda Gibson, Sheriff's Department Correction Center. The $4,000 was a agreed upon amount that Bedford Heights would have for reimbursement of their officers doing the transport.
Mm-hmm.
We looked at the number of transports that was being done. He estimated, he being the police chief, estimated how much he thought that would incur, and 4,000 was the amount we agreed upon.
Okay,
So in exchange, we're not using deputies to do the transport.
right. Okay. All right.
Okay, thank you. Any final questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, I'll make a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Seconded by Mr. McAleer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Item approved. Next item.
Thank you.
Next item, BC 2021-328, Sheriff's Department, submitting an RFP exemption on requisition 6483, which will result in an award recommendation to Lexipol LLC in the amount not to exceed $280,480 for subscription-based risk management and policy manual services for the period January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2024, and recommending the award in connection with said RFP exemption.
Hi, Laura Sims for the Sheriff's Department. This is a subscription-based software that we're using to develop the policies and procedures. It is a follow-on. Originally, we started this particular software as in response to the marshal's report that we had gotten for the jail, where we needed to update the policies. We've been working diligently on that. However, there's still more work to happen. And we're also addressing the law enforcement policies and procedures as well. This will allow us to continue to do that.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Questions from the board?
Yes. This seems like a lot of money for subscriptions and policy manuals. Can you explain why it's so expensive?
Well, you want to have the sheriff will jump in here, please.
Good morning, Sheriff Island. Councilman, it's not simply a subscription service. We also have access to their personnel at their base of operations to assist us with actual drafting of policy, making sure that we're meeting compliance and best practices issues. And we have a weekly briefing with them set every Tuesday with my policy unit so that we can work with them in drafting and creating policies to best practice standards. So it's not just a subscription to a software package. It's also the knowledge and experience of that company in assisting us getting to where we need to be. And then finally, the software package does allow us access to training and grant funding opportunities, as well as maintenance of our policy acknowledgments and training on policy, which we don't currently have any other form to do. So it's not solely a software subscription service. There is more services bundled together. I hope that answers your question.
That helps. And is this something that we intend to use on an ongoing basis going forward, or is it something that once we get our policies and procedures updated and take care of some things that we would not continue with this?
I envision that this is going to be an ongoing process for at least perhaps the next 2 cycles. Unfortunately, we are in the process of having to do a complete refresh, almost a start from scratch Much of the work that was done prior to my arrival was not sufficient, and we've had to go back to the company and re-begin some of our processes. So it will be a period of time until we're to a point of compliance, I think.
So are you saying that our policies and procedures are seriously inadequate?
I'm saying that we are working diligently to make sure that our policies and procedures meet best practices in as timely a manner as we can. There are perhaps some places where we can do much better, but we are identifying, locating, and making those amendments and changes as rapidly as we can.
Can you give a few examples of things that are in need of improvement?
Well, my primary example would be that the state of Ohio has issued standards through the Ohio Collaborative Community Police Advisory Board. Those standards are incorporated into Lexipol's best practice policies, and we are currently not in compliance with the state's standards because we have not reported our compliance, and we do not have the ability in some cases to make that report. So there are places where we need to come up to standards and best practices throughout our policy scheme.
So what kind of standards are we falling short on? Is this a substantive problem, or is this something where we're actually doing it, but we're just not reporting that we're doing it?
It's a mixture of both. In some cases, we are actually doing it and not reporting that we're doing it. For example, our use of force policy does comply with state standards. However, we haven't reported to the state yet. And some of them are non-substantive issues. In our recruitment and hiring practices, our policy as it is written doesn't meet state standards. It meets county standards. We are trying to make some improvements so that we meet both standards. So it is a mix of both types of deficiencies.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Baker.
So thank you for that. That was interesting. So we currently are with Lexipol.
Yes, ma'am.
So, and so we're continuing to continue with them.
Yes, ma'am.
So is it not their services that are inadequate or need updating? It's what it is that we asked from them?
Most of this predates me, so I don't want to make an assumption. Lexipol is a tool to be utilized. I'm not sure that it was being utilized to its fullest extent, and that may be where some of the deficiencies came.
And I notice here the date, unlike many of our contracts, this one doesn't even begin for another 6 to 7 months, 1/1/2022. So is there a reason why, do you need a time to prepare?
It is a time to prepare, yes, ma'am.
So you need to know this is in place so that you can prepare
Yes,
to
ma'am.
accept it? Okay. One other question. Was there any state or any other funding source that would help us in this type of service?
Not that we have determined at this point, no, ma'am.
Thank you.
Sure.
One follow-up question.
Councilman Miller, please.
How long have we been using Lexipol?
I believe since 2018. Yes, I think we're approaching the end of the first 3-year contract.
Thank you.
Mr. Mackler, please.
Sheriff, do you know, since we've been using them since 2018, how many policies have we updated since we started using them?
I don't have any statistics as to usage prior to my arrival. I apologize.
Do we know, I mean, 2 years is a long time to update policy. Are we gonna, do you think we could complete the update of our policies before the end of this contract? Or are we gonna, is it gonna take us 2.5 years?
It will definitely take us at least the next 3-year period of time, and the reason that I say that is that I don't think there's perhaps a general understanding of the number and type of policies that are required in order to effectively run not only a law enforcement operation, but also corrections operation. We're talking about hundreds of policies of various different sizes, lengths, and importance. And coming from the city of Cleveland, where I just came from, it is not unusual for an important policy when you go through the drafting process and you make sure that you reach out to all the stakeholders and you make sure that all your legal compliance practices are done to get a single policy approved, published, and trained to is a period of sometimes 4 to 5 months. And there are a vast number of policies that need to be addressed.
How many?
Some policies, like for example, the Correction Center manual, standards of operating procedures in the Correction Center, those policies all have to be retouched every year on an annual basis in order to meet Bureau of Adult Detention standards, that we are actually reviewing those policies on an annual basis and amending and updating as necessary.
Do all of these policies have to go through the state of Ohio for approval?
Absolutely not. None of them do. We would like to be in compliance with the state standards and show compliance, but these are all internal policies.
So when you say approval, means your approval?
Internal approval, yes.
Do we know, will this service be cheaper once we get our policies updated? Or if we wanted to continue this, will the service be cheaper after the new contract, since it would be perhaps just maintaining or updating on an annual basis the policies, or is this the price that we might be locked in for?
To my understanding, Lexipol's billing practices are to charge per employee. So the bulk of the cost of the contract is the number of employees that we have that will be accessing and utilizing the system. I believe there will be some change in maintenance after the initial First Amendment in 2024, but I don't know those numbers because we haven't gotten there yet. I do know that their primary billing practices is by employee license.
And if it's determined that we're out of policy or compliance with anything based off a state of Ohio inspection or anything, and Lexipol helped us with that given policy, are they responsible? Do they take responsibility in any way if we're out of compliant, even if they said we were? Are they held liable or responsible?
So they will legally defend the information that they give us with regards to best practices and standards. However, if we make internal amendments or changes to those best practices based on local needs or based on what our pragmatic needs are within the facility, they will not back those up. Those will be things that we have to substantiate.
So if we, as you know, Sheriff, we have a number of jail lawsuits. If we got sued related to one of these policies that Lexipol signed off on or agreed to, they would be part of the county's representation to defend us?
It is my understanding that they will provide legal defense to the information that they have presented and that we have accepted as best practice.
Have you come across that in your career yet? I mean, where they've actually defended?
I have not. Because Lexipol is a nationwide organization, much of what they present is very, very good in a very general overarching scheme. And much of what we have to do then is internally look at local needs as well as pragmatic processes to make sure that we have gotten down to the fine details. That's much of what the time in amending, fixing, and updating policy is.
One follow.
Yeah, just to follow up, it's interesting. So this contract doesn't begin until January of next year, but you are working now on upgrading it, even though, because we're still with the same company.
Yes, ma'am. So when I took over, when I was appointed and confirmed by council, one of the very first things I did was to establish an actual policy unit within the department. So we have identified employees internally now who are a single point of contact with the company. Once we made that and got that person trained and up to speed, we started to figure out that in order for us to positively move forward in the direction that I would like to go with best practices and policy amendments and policy creation, that much of the way that the system had been set up prior to my arrival needed to be refreshed. So we are working through those processes right now, which include things like ensuring the company has a valid and current email address list of all of the employees that we have, which is out of date. And there are policies and procedures that were in draft process in the software that we aren't going to be using that actually kind of gum up the works that we're going to be asking for a refresh to clean some of those things out. And it is hoped that, I think by end of the month, that we will have a new playing field with which to work on. Policies that we've developed since I've started are not actually in Lexipol yet because we're waiting for that refresh period. So those exist as a separate, in the county's SharePoint system. We're keeping them separate and just waiting to implement them through Lexipol.
Okay. And I know you said that Lexipol does a broad, but do they have any responsibility at all to make sure that, or at least bring to your attention, this is what we recommend you do?
Absolutely.
Beyond the broadness of what they offer?
They make, not only do they make initial recommendations at the time that policy is drafted,
right?
They put out periodic updates. We get emails sometimes once a week where they will make a point of federal or state or local legislation that has changed and how that might affect policy, and that they direct your attention to it so that you can make appropriate changes.
And you have found in your time that some of those have not been implemented, that they've been overlooked or not put in place?
I don't know how that process worked prior to my arrival. I'm sorry.
All right, good, thank you.
Councilman Miller.
Yes, to Sheriff Island, to follow up on Trevor Mackler's question, would you consult with someone on your team that knows the history and get back to us and let us know how many policies have been created and how many policies have been adopted, amended and adopted so far under this program?
I absolutely will. I fear that I will disappoint you with very low numbers, but again, I don't know that. I'll have to research.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Okay, any final questions from the board? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Miller. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Item approved. Next item.
Thank you.
Next item, BC 2021-329, Sheriff's Department, recommending an award on a purchase order to Cleveland Communications Incorporated in the amount not to exceed $211,523.47 for the purchase of 42 replacement handheld radios for Law Enforcement Division.
Hi, Laura Sims with the Sheriff's Department again. We're requesting approval on the replacement of the handguns, or I'm sorry, the radios, handheld radios for the Law Enforcement Division. We are using grant funds to pay for this, and we will be getting 42 new radios.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Any questions from the board on this item?
Yes.
Councilman Miller.
I'm just surprised that we would put out 17 bid packages and get only one response. Can you provide any enlightenment on that?
That is a good question, and actually it was frustrating for us as well, because we did put them out to the plan holders list that we put together, had Motorola, had everybody that we normally send this stuff out to, and unfortunately, the only one that we got back was the one from Cleveland Communications that met our requirements. And I don't know if it something having to do with possibly the COVID, because we have found as we've been moving forward this year for some of our procurement that there is kind of a ripple effect to what happened with COVID, because since they shut down a lot of factories and manufacturing for pieces and parts, that sometimes it's difficult to put it together. What we're asking for here is, a large number of radios, and so I don't know if possibly they just, weren't able to come up with the requirements that we needed for this. But it was a competitive process. We went through OPD and did everything, within the county standards to try and make that work.
And how did the cost per unit compare with what you expected?
It was about, and I have some information because we looked at this before. So the the price per unit actually was under the Ohio state term schedule for the contract. And so it was what we would have expected. And that was a couple-year contract. I think we're coming up on the end of that. They'll be redoing that again. So we didn't see a significant increase on that from the last time we purchased the radios.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Any final, Councilwoman Baker, please.
So what does 42 represent as far as the number of handheld radios?
So that is probably, and Sheriff, you can help out, we have 200, how many deputies do we have now? Roughly 200.
Okay.
So 42 is like almost less than a quarter of that.
Okay. And do you anticipate you'll be back for another grant to replace more radios?
Actually, what we're looking at this time, we've been able to use some grant funds to get some of these radios. However, we may not be able to continue to do that. This is probably not our best way of handling that, because the radios that we're replacing, I mean, they're not in great shape. And some of them are 10 years old or more. And since this is kind of a first line of, communications, it's important that we have ones that are, good for them. So we're looking at possibly putting together a contract instead, like a 3 to 5 year contract for the radios, so that we can have them sort of a little bit replaced each year to make sure that we keep it within a good scope of that. So we'll be looking at that this year, probably presenting that for next year.
That sounds like a reasonable, thank you.
Any final questions? No? Okay. I'm going to make a motion to approve this item. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Baker. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Item approved. Next
Thank
item.
you. Next item, BC 2021-330, Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Children and Family Services, recommending an award and enter into a contract with Evident Change in the amount not to exceed $30,000 for team decision-making model training for employees for the period July 6, 2021 through June 30th, 2022.
Good morning. Paul Porter, Health and Human Services, on behalf of the Division of Children and Family Services. This is an award on an informal bid that my team completed, and Evident Change was the only bidder that we got for this opportunity. The team decision-making model is a model that DCFS has used since the early 1990s as part of funding through the Annie E. Casey Foundation. There was an assessment done of the policies and practices at DCFS in 2019, and one of the recommendations of that assessment was to pursue refresher training to ensure that staff at DCFS are maintaining fidelity to that model. So we sought a vendor to provide that training, and there are a few goals that we're looking for this vendor to provide, including quality retraining to the key staff that implement this program, including the manager, direct supervisors, and the facilitators that work with the teams that are helping these children and families, ensuring that that facilitation staff receives a higher level of training than other DCFS staff, including when new staff members are onboarded, and making sure that ongoing coaching for staff is available throughout the contract period, so we can hopefully kind of, get the teams that are doing this work at DCFS back in line with what the standards for this model are. It's a $30,000 contract, and we're looking at roughly a 1-year period. We made sure the start date aligned with the date of today's meeting, so we're using a July 6th start date and then a June 30th end date.
Okay, thank you, Paul. All right, questions from the board?
Just one.
Councilwoman Baker, please.
So is this a new program? Is this something that we just felt we needed to do that we have not done before?
Correct. I believe probably in the early 90s, and perhaps since then, there may have been trainings at different times, but this was based on kind of a consultation and review that was completed in 2019, recommending that DCFS seek out this service and identify a vendor to provide this training. So we don't have anything like this right now. That's not to say it's never been done in the past, but certainly not recently.
And that $30,000 you're asking for, how many employees does that cover, do you know?
So this covers training for a number of employees, including management staff and frontline staff. Let me pull out my page of the proposal to identify that exactly. And one thing I want to mention is the vendor proposed the opportunity to provide remote training if needed as a result of the pandemic. But this cost also covers in-person training, which, sometimes depending on the discretion of DCFS, if that's possible, staff sometimes get more out of trainings like this if they're delivered in person. So this will cover 4 half-day sessions with up to 20 trainees each. So that would be like 80 staff members that could get that level of training. And then up to 6 DCFS staff annually would participate in a facilitator training. So they might be able to do kind of a train the trainer with other staff members, after this contract ends.
Right. Okay, and one time. It's not
So
ongoing. You have one class and it's over.
exactly, for the train the trainer. And I think that's a 3-day facilitator training.
Okay, thank you. Good to know.
Thank you.
Any additional questions from the board? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
A second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Baker. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item approved. Next item.
Next item, BC 2021-331, Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Senior and Adult Services, submitting an amendment to a master contract with various providers for various services for the Cuyahoga Options for Independent Living Services Program for the period January 1st, 2018 through June 30th, 2021, for additional funds in the total amount not to exceed $200,000 for the contracts listed as items A through T on the printed agenda.
Good morning, Paul Porter, Health and Human Services, on behalf of the Division of Senior and Adult Services. This is a contract amendment to add funds to the Options Master Agreement that just ended June 30th of this year. You might recall that as part of the budget update for 2021, there was an additional $600,000 allocated for the Options Program. We just sought approval and received approval from council for the new contract that started July 1. I believe that was approved at the most recent council meeting. And when we were putting that contract together and looking at how we could spread out the additional funds, would we do, a 50-50 split, 300,000 the first half of the year or 300,000 the second half of the year? We took a look at utilization because some of our numbers were a little bit different depending on the service as a result of the pandemic. And we were able to do 400,000 of that additional funds in the new contract. And then we're adding the remaining $200,000 in funds to the contract that just ended. This will allow us to pay any remaining invoices. We're pretty confident that we've got, that estimate as close as we can to accurate. If we had done a 50-50 split, we might have been in a position where there was $100,000 in the prior contract left on the table, so to speak. And we feel like based on the increased utilization that we're seeing during the spring and early summer, that the $400,000 will be better spent in the new contract.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Any questions from the board?
Just one.
Councilwoman Baker, please.
And the Options Program, good to see it. Great program, and I know that there's no waiting list as we asked, so that's all good. Was the Option Program involved in the vaccination of helping those that were not able to leave their home or needed special assistance?
Sure. So I will say that the contract that DSAS entered into for vaccine registration and transportation services, 2 of the options vendors were included in that. 3 of them, actually. Transport Assistance, Toby Transportation, and Senior Transportation Connection. Because the options program is HHS levy funded, we utilize the levy dollars towards kind of the standard in-home services that options has been used for historically. And I believe we were able to use CARES Act funds for the vaccine specific, targeted services under that. So some of the same vendors, it just wasn't delivered under the options umbrella.
Got it. Good to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any final questions from the board? Seeing none, I will make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilwoman Baker. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item approved. Next item.
Okay, moving on to exemptions. Item BC 2021-332 is being held at the request of the department. So we'll move on to item BC 2021-333, Medical Examiner's Office, recommending an alternative procurement process which will result in award recommendations to various providers in the total amount not to exceed $375,000 for outside toxicology testing services for the period June 1st, 2021 through May 31st, 2024, with Axis Forensic Toxicology Incorporated, Cleveland Clinic, National Medical Services, doing business as NMS Labs, the Metro Health System, and University Hospital.
Hugh Shannon, Medical Examiner's Office. This is a renewal of the previous 3-year exemption. These entities do specialty testing that we are unable to do in our building. We did a review of the previous vendors who had provided these services. We did change one of them out because of the capabilities within our building did change. So we had done testing for THC and marijuana with Ohio State Highway Patrol. We no longer need that service, but we did add Metro to the list. They've done a lot of work for us with radiology, and we also do other testing like carbon monoxide, things like that. We don't have those capabilities within the building or the staff to be able to do those. So we made those adjustments. The exemption is done because we don't know from week to week or year to year how many tests will need to be done in each category. It just depends on the nature of what comes to us. So we've done this exemption for the last 3 years and would like to continue.
Okay, thank you, Hugh. Any questions from the board on this item?
One question.
Yes, Councilwoman Baker, please.
So have these, 5 services been picked because what they specialize in, or because you may have a volume and you need to divide it among those that are there?
No, it's by their specialties.
By their specialty. So UH may have things that Metro doesn't?
Correct.
And Cleveland Clinic may offer things that neither one of those two offer?
Correct.
So, okay. Thank you.
Sure. Any final questions from the board? Mr. Mackler, please.
Mr. Chair, no question, just I'm going to recuse myself. A family member works at one of the companies.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to make a motion to approve this item. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Miller. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have one recusal. Opposed? Item approved.
Thank you.
Next item.
Moving on to the consent agenda, items BC 2021-334 through 337.
Board members, please take a moment. If anyone has a question, just let me know. Councilman Miller? Oh, okay. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Today's consent agenda is approved. Moving on to other business.
No other business.
No other business. Public comment. Anyone from the public wishes to speak may do so now. Okay, no public comment. I will make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Miller. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. I think we need some suntan lotion in this crowd. I don't know. You're going to be